I'm Sharon, an architect by trade, but today I'm stepping into the role of a bride, brimming with excitement as I walk down the aisle. Every detail of our wedding, from the flowers to the playlist, bears the mark of my meticulous planning. I've imagined this day as a scene plucked from a romance novel, a celebration of our love. At the altar stands Peter, my soon-to-be husband, an engineer with a practical, no-nonsense approach to life that complements my creative flair. Together, we've always felt like a perfect match, each enhancing the other's strengths. As I approach, I catch a glimpse of something troubled in his eyes, but I chalk it up to pre-wedding nerves. I overhear Peter's mother, Julie, whispering nearby, her gaze intense and unsettling. Despite her strained smile and compliments, her eyes betray a different sentiment. The ceremony continues, but Peter's vows lack the usual warmth, and there's a tense pause before he finally says, "I do." During the ring exchange, Julie insists on capturing the moment with a photo, her words tinged with an air of caution rather than celebration. At the reception, she offers backhanded compliments on my dress, highlighting its beauty while subtly critiquing its non-traditional style. With a light-hearted remark about celebrating love in our own unique way, I deflected Julie's subtle criticisms about our wedding choices. But before the conversation could escalate, Peter intervened, politely asking his mother for a moment alone with me. His interruption seemed like a defense of our decisions, yet his tone hinted at a resignation rather than genuine support. It felt oddly out of place on what should have been a day of pure joy. Scanning the crowd for reassurance, I hoped to find solace in the chaos of the wedding festivities. Yet, deep down, I sensed that something fundamental was wrong. The tension in the air was undeniable, and the red flags waved too boldly to ignore any longer. As Peter and I glided onto the dance floor for our first dance, the distance between us felt more than physical. Though our movements were synchronized, emotionally, we were worlds apart. The song, meant to celebrate our unity, now felt like a cruel irony. When the music faded, Peter's attempt at reassurance only served to emphasize the growing chasm between us. "So, Mrs. Sharon, ready for forever?" he asked, the irony of his question hanging heavy in the air. I wanted to voice my doubts, to question whether our tomorrows would be overshadowed by the unease of today. But instead, I masked my concerns with a hesitant affirmation, clinging to the hope that the darkness looming over us would eventually dissipate, and that our rocky start was not indicative of what lay ahead. Unbeknownst to me, this day would merely serve as the overture to a challenging period that would test not only the resilience of our marriage but the very core of my identity. As we toasted to our union, the celebratory words felt hollow, overshadowed by an unsettling sense of loss. The journey back to my home, a charming 3-bedroom house that stood as a symbol of my hard-earned independence, marked the beginning of our shared life. This space was meant to be our sanctuary, the solid ground upon which we would build our future together. However, it quickly became the stage for a series of conflicts that felt more like invasions than the start of marital bliss. Julie, residing just a short distance away, began to visit with alarming frequency, often uninvited. Her criticisms were relentless, targeting everything from my culinary endeavors to the decor of our home. Whether lamenting the flavor of my dishes or the choice of bathroom tiles, her complaints were diverse but equally cutting. Peter's attempts to mediate were feeble at best, appearing more for show than genuine protection. Julie's intrusions became a regular ordeal, each visit an opportunity for her to assert dominance through thinly veiled insults and critiques. The pivotal moment arrived one afternoon when Julie showed up with suitcases in hand, her intentions clear and her sense of entitlement palpable. This wasn't just another visit, it was an invasion, threatening to smother the life out of our fledgling marriage. "I'll be staying here now," she declared, breezing past me to deposit her luggage in my favorite cozy corner by the window, my haven for quiet reflection and reading. "This spot will suit me just fine," Julie proclaimed, her tone leaving no room for argument. I turned to Peter, my eyes pleading for him to intervene, to uphold the sanctity of our home. This was a decision we should have made together. Sensing an opportunity, I called Peter aside, my voice trembling. "This is our home. Shouldn't we have discussed this first?" His gaze met mine, devoid of the warmth and affection that once filled it. "Mom's getting older, Sharon. It's not right for her to be alone. She needs to be with family," he explained, emphasizing the word family in a way that made me feel like an outsider. So, I'm not family? Is that what you're saying? The words barely escaped my lips before tears welled up, a mix of hurt and frustration. Peter quickly responded, his patience wearing thin. You know that's not what I mean. But I owe her this. What about us? What about what we owe to each other? We're supposed to be building our life together, not living with your mom, I argued. But it was as if I were speaking to a brick wall. My concerns, my feelings seemed insignificant, and just like that, Julie's move into our home was decided, overriding my wishes. With Julie's arrival, the atmosphere in our home shifted dramatically. Every corner, once filled with our shared dreams, now bore the weight of tension and conflict. My tranquil reading nook was swallowed by her belongings. The kitchen became a battleground for her criticisms, and Peter, the man I married, seemed more aligned with Julie than with me. It hit me that I wasn't just fighting for my marriage or my space anymore. I was fighting for my sense of self, my dignity, and my peace. A nagging thought lingered. How had it come to this? How had my desires, my space, and my voice become secondary to Julie's preferences? The change was stark. My cherished nook became a symbol of Julie's intrusion. The kitchen, a sight for her relentless scrutiny, and my husband had transformed into a stranger, siding with what felt like the opposing team. And this was only the beginning. Life, already challenging, spiraled into an unbearable nightmare as the oppressive atmosphere in our home mirrored the shrinking of my own space and voice. Adding to the mounting pressure, a discovery brought everything into sharp focus, the unmistakable presence of 2 blue lines on a pregnancy test, signaling a new life amidst the turmoil. This revelation intensified the situation, rendering the already dense atmosphere almost suffocating. Clutching the pregnancy test, my hands shook with a mix of anticipation and dread as I grappled with the realization that the stakes were now even higher. I had always imagined that discovering I was pregnant would be among the happiest moments of my life, filled with excitement and celebration. Yet, standing alone in the bathroom, tears welling in my eyes as I faced my reflection, I found this milestone felt more like a weighty burden. When I shared the news with Peter, his reaction fell disappointingly flat. Well, that's something, he muttered, swiftly steering the conversation toward a renovation idea his mother had proposed. It became evident that Julie saw my pregnancy not merely as news, but as her new project. She took it upon herself to oversee every aspect, from my diet to the birthing plan, all under the guise of being helpful. Julie's interference quickly morphed into a form of control. She scrutinized every morsel I ate, casting judgmental glances at even the simplest meals and questioning my weight management, despite my assurances that my diet was doctor-approved. Doctors these days have no clue, she scoffed dismissively, convinced that her outdated wisdom trumped modern medical advice. As the pregnancy progressed, Julie's demands became increasingly outrageous. She asserted control over my home, expecting me to maintain it to her exacting standards, regardless of my condition. Sharon, why isn't the living room clean yet? She would demand from her perch in my once tranquil reading nook, now usurped as her headquarters for endless phone scrolling and TV watching. My pleas for rest fell on deaf ears, with Julie dismissing pregnancy as no excuse for laziness. Peter's silence during these exchanges only exacerbated the tension. His lack of support became glaringly apparent, particularly during a dinner that devolved into an argument over baby names. Julie's harsh critique of my chosen name was the final straw. Enough, Julie. This is my child, and I will decide how to name them, I countered, my patience worn thin. Her response was one of indignation, as if my assertion of control over my own life was a personal affront. Peter's attempts at mediation, siding with his mother and dismissing me as emotional, widened the rift between us. I was left feeling more isolated than ever, trapped in a home that had become a battlefield where my voice seemed to matter less and less. It was no longer just about choosing a baby name. It was about reclaiming my autonomy, my dignity, and the sense of belonging that had been systematically eroded by Julie's overbearing presence. Staring at the reflection of my once gleaming wedding ring, I scarcely recognized the woman gazing back at me, a woman who was slowly losing everything she cherished, her sanctuary, her self-respect, and most agonizingly, her resolve to stand up for herself. In the midst of one of our tense confrontations, Julie, brimming with a vindictive sense of triumph, delivered a crushing blow that changed everything. She icily suggested that maybe I didn't belong in their family if I couldn't handle a simple family disagreement. Peter's response, or lack thereof, was perhaps the most agonizing part. His silence spoke volumes, conveying that my suffering wasn't just beginning. It had been my reality for far too long. Days blurred together as I navigated through a house that no longer felt like mine, holding on to the only beacon of hope left, the life growing inside me. Yet even this small solace felt threatened in the toxic environment I found myself in. The breaking point arrived on a chilly evening during yet another agonizing family dinner. Despite my efforts to prepare a flawless meal, Julie's criticisms were relentless, attacking everything from the seasoning to the preparation. Her words felt like physical blows, each comment chipping away at my already fragile confidence. But it was her next jab that pierced the deepest, questioning my ability as a mother based on my supposed failure to manage household chores. Peter's acquiescence was the final straw, pushing me past my breaking point. Fueled by a potent mixture of anger, pent-up resentment, and sheer desperation, I found my voice. Step it up? I've been carrying our child, managing our home, and enduring endless criticism from your mother, and you're telling me to step it up. The shock on their faces spoke volumes, but I was beyond caring. For too long, I had allowed myself to be diminished and demeaned, but in that moment, I reclaimed my voice. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. The clarity of my decision cut through years of suppression like a beacon of light. It was a declaration of my refusal to endure any more disrespect or emotional torment. I was prepared to fight for myself, for my child, and for a future liberated from the shadows that had clouded my life. As I spoke, my voice trembled with emotion, yet I remained resolute in my stance. I refused to raise my child in an environment where their mother was constantly undermined. If this is your idea of family, then count me out, I declared, my words ringing with finality as I rose from the dinner table, leaving behind their stunned silence. Gathering only the essentials, I made my way to the door, my hands shaking as I reached for the handle, eager to escape the oppressive atmosphere. Julie, ever the provocateur, seized the moment to deliver her most cutting remark yet. And where do you think you're going? This is Peter's house, not yours. Pausing, I turned to face her, my resolve steeling. Actually, Julie, this house is mine. I bought it. I decide who stays and who goes. Peter's voice broke through, laced with desperation. Sharon, please, let's talk about this. But I was beyond negotiation. There's nothing left to discuss. I replied, my tears a testament to the pain of my decision. Stepping out into the cold night felt like embarking on a new chapter of my life, one filled with uncertainty yet also tinged with a profound sense of liberation. The closing door behind me marked the end of a tumultuous saga, a final farewell to a life I could no longer endure. With each step, a mix of pain and determination coursed through me, fueled by the urgent need to reclaim my autonomy. The journey to my parents' home blurred with cold, exhaustion, and heartache. Just moments from the sanctuary of my childhood haven, a stumble sent me crashing to the ground, the physical pain a mere echo of my inner turmoil. Yet, far from deterring me, this fall only strengthened my resolve. Arriving at my parents' doorstep, the concern etched on their faces mirrored the gravity of my situation. As they rushed me to the hospital, I realized this moment of vulnerability marked not just an end, but a beginning. Lying in the hospital bed, the reality of my circumstances sinking in, I knew returning to my former life was not an option. This breaking point was a vital step towards reclaiming the life and dignity that had been stripped away, a painful yet necessary transition towards healing and independence. The clarity that accompanies such moments is profound, illuminating the path forward from the shadows of the past towards a future of my own creation. Amidst a whirlwind of emotions, I stood surrounded by the comforting yet anxious presence of my parents. Their unspoken concern spoke volumes about their fears regarding the true state of my marriage, now starkly unveiled in its troubled depths. Breaking the heavy silence, my mother voiced her concern, her words laden with the weight of the unfolding reality. Sharon, dear, what's your plan now? Uncertain yet determined. I'm not sure, Mom, but one thing's certain. I can't go back to that life. Not now, not ever. My declaration, more assured than I expected, resonated with newfound determination. My father, who had been pacing anxiously, paused to offer reassurance, emphasizing their unwavering support regardless of my decision. He urged me to consider not just my own future, but also the future of the life growing inside me. His words prompted a silent acknowledgement from me. My mind had been a battleground of uncertain scenarios, each fraught with the possibility of a fresh start. The unexpected buzz of my phone shattered my reverie. A message from Peter, a plea for communication. Yet to me, his timing felt like a door long closed. His words, unseen, were left hanging in the void as I powered off my phone, a symbolic end to our dialogue. My next steps became clear, marked by action rather than words. Consulting a family lawyer became my first decisive act towards untangling the turmoil of my marriage. With the unwavering support of my parents, we navigated the cold legal breakdown of our union, discussing divorce, custody arrangements, and financial support. Despite the sterile nature of these discussions, they empowered me, marking the initial steps towards seizing control of my destiny and securing the well-being of my unborn child. Within a week, Peter and Julie received the formal notices, divorce papers for Peter and an eviction notice for Julie from the home that was legally mine. Alongside these were demands for substantial child support and compensation for the emotional turmoil I had endured. Though drastic, these actions were imperative, severing the ties that had long bound me to a life of despair. When I eventually re-engaged with my phone, it was inundated with Peter's attempts to reconnect. His messages carried a blend of regret and a plea for reconciliation. Yet the wounds inflicted by nights of humiliation, years of neglect, and Julie's calculated malice, all silently condoned by Peter, ran too deep. The fleeting temptation to entertain his overtures was swiftly overshadowed by the memory of enduring pain. This moment wasn't merely about closing a chapter, it was about reclaiming my narrative, where the shadows of the past no longer dictated the brightness of my future. The love I once harbored for him had been utterly eclipsed by the sorrow of our shattered marriage. Taking decisive action, I purged his messages, erased his contact details, and blocked him across all social platforms. To me, Peter had become a relic of my history, a distressing chapter I was more than ready to close. Despite the knowledge that the road ahead would be rife with challenges, divorce, especially with a child on the way, is a complex journey. I was finally charting my own course, stepping out from the suffocating shadow that had enveloped me toward a future brimming with hope. On the day of the court proceedings, the atmosphere in the room bore the distinct sterile chill characteristic of spaces where destinies are determined. Seated beside me, my lawyer exuded confidence, while my parents offered silent yet unwavering support from behind. Across the aisle, Peter seemed adrift, the reality of the situation dawning upon him, while Julie's countenance oscillated between shock and defiance. As the session commenced, the judge entered, prompting everyone to rise. What followed was a whirlwind of legal proceedings, with accusations and evidence laid bare. It seemed as though Julie and Peter were seeing their actions for the first time, not just through the lens of the law, but through my perspective as well. When Julie was called to speak, her usual confidence waned. She attempted to justify her actions as concern for her son's well-being, but her explanation fell flat, especially under the judge's skeptical gaze. Judge Nina R. Morrison's verdict was unequivocal and resolute. I was granted a full divorce and sole custody of our unborn child. Peter was ordered to provide child support, while Julie, faced with a substantial fine for emotional abuse and harassment, appeared visibly shaken. As the judge's gavel fell, a wave of liberation washed over me, tinged with a hint of melancholy. My marriage hadn't concluded with dramatic confrontations, but rather with the quiet shuffling of papers and the unwavering voice of justice. This chapter of my life was sealed shut, paving the way for a fresh start unburdened by the chains of the past. The price of my newfound freedom was one I never could have foreseen on the day I exchanged vows. Exiting the courtroom, Peter approached with a bewildered expression, expressing his remorse and disbelief at the unraveling of our lives. Yet, as I looked into his eyes, I no longer saw my future, but rather a profound void where love once dwelled. I never envisioned this as our ending, Peter, but apologies can't undo what's been done, I asserted firmly, turning away to bid farewell to the past. Julie sought my gaze, perhaps in search of forgiveness or acknowledgement, yet I couldn't afford her that closure. She had taken too much from me, and I refused to grant her the satisfaction of witnessing the depth of her impact on my spirit. Stepping into the embrace of the outside world, it felt as though life welcomed me with open arms, the sun shining brighter and colors more vibrant. It was as if I viewed the world through a new lens, unclouded by the shadows of turmoil. My mother's embrace and words of pride brought tears to my eyes. "You're truly free now, Sharon," she said, her emotion palpable. "I couldn't have faced this without you and Dad." I responded, feeling an overwhelming gratitude for their unwavering support. That evening, in the tranquility of my home, now solely mine, I discovered a profound peace, alone yet far from lonely. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I was free to live by my own standards. The road ahead as a single mother appeared daunting. Yet as I sensed my unborn child's gentle movements, a wave of confidence enveloped me. We would navigate this journey together, I was certain of it. The trials I had weathered brought me to this juncture of self-discovery. Though they left scars, they told a story of resilience, not surrender. Gazing toward the horizon, I was not merely propelled by circumstance but propelled by choice. This realization filled me with a profound sense of empowerment, poised to embrace what lay ahead, not out of obligation but from a place of deliberate determination. I recognized that this was the dawn of a significant new chapter.